Nothing that dies stays dead. It's
Mm,
a cycle. And I think that what you're talking about, these pre-Christian communities, that's what we're missing because they embedded death cycles and burial rituals and initiations into their culture so that people know how to sit with
mm,
pain. Who told you you were naked? Who said being human meant this? You've
mm,
always been this type of manifestation of consciousness. Who made it mean something to you? You got to identify that. You got to identify your meaning maker. Christianity has given us a beautiful metaphor to make meaning out of death.
mm,
Unless a grain of wheat dies, it remains alone, right?
mm.
But if it goes into the ground, it sheds its skin and life bursts forth.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Excavations. This is a podcast that centers marginalized voices, bodies, and topics. Today, I'm talking to Dr. Tamis Spencer-Helms, and I wanted to ask, should I call you Dr. Tamis Spencer? How would
Yeah,
you like
you
to
can
be
call me.
addressed?
Yeah, man. Call me anything but wrong. I mean, you can call me
Okay,
Dr. T, you can call me Tamise, you can call me friend,
okay,
whatever you want to do.
okay. Tamis,
Yeah,
would you introduce yourself for our audience?
for sure. Yeah, so I'm Tamise Spencer Helms, and it's really good to be here. I live on the land of the Mattapanai, Seneca. Powhatan is kind of the more vernacular word that people use for it, and I get my water from the James River, otherwise known as Richmond, Virginia. So like I was telling Connie, I'm in the belly of the beast. I'm about 2 hours from the center of all the shenanigans right now. But other than that, I do a lot of work in post-Christian formation. My doctoral thesis is thinking about para-ontology, which is like a fancy word to say how do you step outside of the logics that have created all of this and begin to build otherwise ways of
Mm,
being and ways of knowing and
mm,
ways of naming God and ourselves. So my
mm,
work was thinking about how do you decenter conversion, which is really kind of a
mm,
white logic, and actually center self-actualization, which is a little bit more of a
mm,
indigenous way of thinking about coming alive in quote unquote Christ, which I still
mm,
keep. I'm a post-Christian, but
mm,
I keep Jesus. It's more of a intentional adjacency, right, to my tradition,
mm.
where it was like, you know, Christianity became a cage. And so I had to follow Jesus outside of that cage in order to keep the best things about the tradition. And so now
Mm,
I'm just living out here and trying to develop frameworks for like other people who find themselves in that place.
mhm,
And then I guess one of the things I think online I talk about a lot is asking to see the manager. So it's just this
mm,
idea of like questioning, who is responsible for telling us who we are and who do we give that
mm,
authority to? Because it's a very important question and it can lead you to some very precarious situations if you don't answer that question for yourself. So I like to tell people to ask to
mm,
see the manager. That's kind of what I do. You know what I mean?
mm,
Came through white
mm,
evangelicalism, grew up in the black
mhm,
church, and now I'm just out here black and queer and finding new friends.
mm. Okay. Today, I invited Tamise on because I watched this one video and I literally caught my breath. I felt my body. And the video was, I'm
Wow.
paraphrasing you, but you were like, you know, we're not doing DEI. We're not doing listening and learning. We're doing hospice work for white folks. We are helping
Yes.
white people gear up to die. I follow a lot of hospice nurses.
Yeah.
And for me, I live with a chronic illness. So
Yeah.
dying has been a huge part of my life. And the
Uh-huh.
awareness of knowing that I am dying, knowing we're all
Mhm.
dying. And you characterize this whiteness as this anxiety, and people are anxious and not even knowing about what, right? And there are so many progressive black and brown voices that I think are, rightfully in their anger and rage. And I feel it's in me too, right? Of kind of just like, I don't know how to move with these people, right? Even though, and
Okay.
that is in kind of mirroring of the whiteness that is instilled in me, right? Of
Yeah.
like, I don't know how to move with everyone, right? Like, because
Mm.
it feels too difficult. And I see in your work such a graciousness, a kind of love, a way of holding to say that it is hospice work, because I've been wrestling with, and I want to hear you talk about what you mean. But to me, I
Mhm.
was like, hospice work is interesting because it
Uh-huh.
doesn't mean black and brown labor the way it has meant, because nobody can do the dying for them. I cannot
That's right.
die for you.
That's right.
I'm not Christ. I'm not a white Jesus, so I can't die for you. So then,
Mhm.
if it's hospice work, people who are not white are positioning themselves as they're still labor, they're still grief,
It's like
but
doulas.
yes, but different. And so
Mhm.
I'm like, I think you should teach us all what you mean by that. And what does that look like? How do we do this hospice work?
Yes, and I think, I am not trained, in that
Mm-hmm.
I have a good friend, E. Corey Cole, who's another one, you should get on here,
Mm-hmm.
who is a birth and death doula. And they talk to me a lot. So a lot of this kind of came through thinking about how they were talking to me about how birth and death and those portals are very, very similar.
Mm-hmm.
The experience of coming towards birth and the experience of coming towards death are actually very similar somatic and existential experiences. And
Mm-hmm.
so when I was watching my daughter be born, my second daughter be born, there were a lot of things that I watched my spouse do as they were going through labor, thinking about, oh my
Mm-hmm.
gosh, this is what I'm watching happen with white progressives or people who are, family members are showing their true colors and things like that, and they feel this sort of devastation and hopelessness and numbness almost. It's a
Mm-hmm.
disorienting experience that I can see them entering into. And as many of them as I was watching online, spout off and quote, there is no way that if your
Mm-hmm.
entire worldview has been built on one thing, that taking
Mm-hmm.
3 graduate courses means that you are now able to lead in this place. It
Yeah.
would actually be a disservice for you to not actually excavate whiteness from your life and then
Mm-hmm.
show up. And the way that I like to think about it as hospice is like, you have to pass through the portal of death to this thing. And that is the way that this
Mm-hmm.
thing gives you goodies, the way that this thing gives you automatic authority, the assumption that you're
Mm-hmm.
competent. Right. All of
Mm-hmm.
those things are coming from algorithms that were baked in the logics of whiteness. Right? And so there are so many things that we can learn about philosophy, science, I mean biology, all of the sciences and even our religion over here has all been embedded with the idea of white supremacy and white body supremacy and white superiority. Everything in my
Mm-hmm.
book, I talk about everything, it has been leavened with that. That means it's baked in. And so when you
Mm-hmm.
come into contact with it and you know what it is, then you can go, okay, this is whiteness at work. And one of the ways whiteness shows
Mm-hmm.
up is the ways that we are not willing to die. It's an
Mm-hmm.
insatiable need to conquer and optimize. But no one is asking whoever set this in motion.
Mm-hmm.
Whiteness can never answer the question of its manager because you have to buy into an ideology, right, to participate in
Mm-hmm.
whiteness. Whiteness can never
Mm-hmm.
answer for itself. The only way it
Mm-hmm.
answers for itself is saying, I'm not this. And so when
Mm-hmm.
you see that kind of behavior and movements, this idea that I
Mm-hmm.
am what I am is whatever you're not. Well, babe, that's not an identity, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's an opposite.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why sometimes these logics they can't heal and there's so much vitriol and mudslinging online and the way to
Mm-hmm.
be famous online is to attack somebody or tear them down or because those algorithms are made in the same colonial logic that built
Mm-hmm.
America. And when you buy
Mm-hmm.
into them, even if you're quoting Willie James Jennings, even if you're
Mm-hmm.
quoting Bell Hooks, you can still be bought into whiteness. And whiteness,
Mm-hmm.
as we can see, child, from these
Mm-hmm.
hearings, whiteness leads to psychosis and dissociation, and you become
Mm-hmm.
something like a zombie. I mean, the inability to face
Disembodiment.
the reflection, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking about that thing that happened this week in Congress and just thinking the inability to turn around and look, that
Mm-hmm.
is the fruit of white supremacy. It is you can't even look in the mirror. You have become so
Mm-hmm.
dissociated and dysregulated and disconnected from your humanity, you can't look another human in the eye. And that
Mm-hmm.
is a dangerous place to be. And that's why I talk about it so much. Like, we have to die to this thing or it will kill us.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of this, fall on the rock or the rock will fall on
Mm-hmm.
you. You don't have a choice. This
Mm-hmm.
whole place was designed using these logics. And so when you come
Mm-hmm.
in contact with them, you have to call them out. I talk about that online a lot too, of like,
Mm-hmm.
I have beef with logics. I don't have,
Mhm.
I come for logics, not people, right? Because the
Mm.
logics themselves are making people inhumane.
Mm.
So when we say hospicing, it's really helping white people come to the conclusion that, yeah, your identity, you didn't have to much fight for that. And so
Mm.
now the process is going to be, who am I, apart from all of the
Mhm.
things that came riding on this platter, that people of
Mm.
color don't have the luxury of doing. People of color had to fight for identity in a way, right? You had to, because if
Mhm.
the system is telling you that you're only 3/5 of a human, but you certainly don't feel that way, and you just live just your normal life. You just show up in life and you show forth humanity
Mm.
in spite of the logics that are telling you you're not a human. Then they always have
Mhm.
to keep it in place. Otherwise, you
Mm.
undermine you
Mm.
undermine what they're saying is true, right? You undermine it.
Mhm.
How are you going to tell a whole people group that they are incompetent and not human? Look at what they've done.
Mhm.
Right, so
Mhm.
you keep moving the needle, right? The
Yep.
identification with the ideal, it always moves. It always shape shifts, excuse me. And those are the types of things I'm like, "Y'all, we can actually get off this ride altogether if we like. We don't
Mm.
have to keep playing
Mm.
games trapped in the logic of whiteness. It won't serve us. It won't heal the world. It is dangerous leaven that just has to go. We have to, like I talk about in the book, we have to unleaven the bread completely. We gotta start
Mhm.
over, and we have to leave it out. So
Mm.
when you look at progressivism, and I'm a shout out to all the great, I love, you see my page, I like white progressives. I got white progressive
Mhm.
friends. But the thing that I'm like pleading with them to do is, if you don't face this death and die it, you will re-inscribe all of that stuff,
Mhm.
because whiteness attaches to your way of being in the world.
Yeah.
That's how it functions. It functions in your body. It functions in the way that you look at and think about reality. It functions in what you fear. It functions in,
Mm.
like, who you look to be an authority. It affects, I talk about it in this, like, scene. So somatic, epistemological, which means, like, how do we make sense of the world?
Mhm.
Existential, it means what are we afraid of? And then neurobiological, what has been encoded on our brain? The fact that we only have a few
Mhm.
categories for Black people in our brains, because we never expand our world, right? These
Mm.
things, this is the realm, right, of coming
Mm.
coming through, through death into life. And that death
Mm.
process is going to address your body,
Mm.
your fear. It's going to
Mm.
cause you to grieve. It's going to cause you to have to step out of comforts. And so if
Mm.
people are not willing to do that, I actually don't want to hear what they have to say online. They won't be helpful.
Mm.
It won't be
Mhm.
helpful, and it can't be life-giving. If it's bound in whiteness, it's death dealing.
Mm. I'm struck by so many moments of what you said, but the image of Pambani not willing to turn back, right? I I'm thinking of, in terms of hospice work, this idea of like modeling when the skin changes and like the circulation is pulling from the extremities and the skin changes color.
Mm,
And you become like blotchy modeled. And I'm
mm.
thinking, and like the outside starts showing what happens on the inside, right?
Yes,
And
that's
so
right.
it's funny, I mean, funny, but when I
Okay.
see the picture, right, when if she looked back, she would see what would happen to her
That's
under
right.
the system, right?
That's right.
And she can't look because that would finally show what's happening here.
That's right.
And yeah, and it's like, you know, you mentioned that like black is on a phenotype in that video, that
Yeah.
black is your positionality from the
Mhm.
state, right? Your
Mhm.
positionality towards the state. And now
Mhm.
when I'm hearing you talk about this, I'm like, white, I don't hear it talked about the other way, as in like white is a positionality towards the state in which you don't look at all, right? Like you
That's right.
cannot look.
That's right.
You cannot
It's made up,
face your
and
death.
it's like, you can't, like, when you're in a situation, like, when
Mhm.
you're growing up, I don't when I think about who I am, when I think of Tamise in the world, I see through my eyes, right? Like, I
Mhm.
I don't watch my body walking around in the world. I see you, right? And so this idea of whiteness is really birthed out of whatever fear arose in those
Mhm.
colonizers when they looked at
Mhm.
indigenous and Black bodies, whatever that represented to them. Who I am has nothing to do with that. And there's another good people you gotta talk to, Billy and Paul Horde, who wrote a book called You
Mm.
Contamination. And they
Mm.
think about disgust and purity, because really anti-blackness, which is what I'm trying to get people to move towards thinking about because of this
Mhm.
position language, right? When you think
Mm,
about anti-blackness, it means it's the tendency we have to scurry from dark and black and unknown and void. That's
mhm,
existential fear. It's fear of
mhm,
contamination, right? And so a lot of times what these people will do is they'll build an entire world, an entire structure based around purity, but has no contact with
mhm,
anybody unlike them. And I keep telling
mm,
people, like, if your truths were so potent, they wouldn't take violence to uphold them. If you had
mhm,
integrity, you could turn around and look, right? And
mm,
so
mhm,
what it is it's a scurrying away from the mirror because you have to come to terms with the fact that you have built an entire identity based on your fear of the other person. And so
mm,
that other person then it gets institutionalized, and Calvin Warren talks about this as ontological terror, right? So
mhm,
that fear of the other, the fear of what this body that doesn't look like mine represents, and that thing, it represents an existential fear, a threat to
mm,
you and to your own sense of being. Well, that gets
mm,
encoded, right? In science, it
mhm,
gets encoded in the ways that we think about most everything. It's Christian Cooper watching birds and having the cops
mm,
called. If you think about what happens when usually when black people get the cops called on them, they're just being. They're just
mhm,
enjoying themselves. So Calvin
mhm,
Warren would point to that and say that black joy, black being, black authority
mhm,
undermines your actual existential ground. You feel almost like a zeitgeist.
mm,
You come into contact with the groundlessness of your own identity. And that's why white people have such a hard time around black people and black joy. They don't understand where it
mm,
comes from because it didn't
mm,
come from the system and it didn't come
mm,
from capital. It came from another place,
mm,
and it's a place that whiteness cannot give you access to. So
mm,
again, Anne Bondi could turn around, but she would have to face and own
mhm,
and weep and mourn. And she would have to
mhm,
tell the truth about her choices in this life, right?
mm,
And what we would prefer to do is justify our choices because of the scapegoat that we pick. Well, I'm like
mm,
this because you're like that. It doesn't work like
mm,
that because actually
mhm,
that's another human. And if you can do
mm,
that to another human, you actually don't love yourself. And these are
yeah,
the types of conversations. This is why I still mess with Jesus, because Jesus was on to this. He's a G in this regard. Like,
mhm,
he's saying, like, you cannot if you can call someone raha, right? Like,
mhm,
if you can decide that the world is better off without this person, then what's to keep somebody from saying the world is better off without you? If
yeah,
you can justify it, so can they.
mhm,
And so the
mm,
question becomes, what are we using to justify this stuff? Nobody has an answer. It's made up. So
yeah,
then the question becomes, so why are we still participating in it?
mm. Do
And
we
that
have a
question,
choice? Do
do
we
we?
have a choice? Like
Do we have
like,
a choice?
as in, like, I think about this, right? Like, why is it
Yes.
that you mentioned the white algorithm, which I am
Yes.
also a part of, we're all a part of, and
Mhm.
why isn't your work uplifted and getting viral all the time? I look at the quality of your work, I don't understand it, but it's like, does that mean like, this is a very practical question, right? Like, it's like, do
Sure.
we can consciously, to me, choose joy, choose embodiment, right?
Yeah.
But as scholars, writers, artists,
Yeah.
it's like you are still sharing your work.
Yeah.
How do we still participate in the algorithm or just like, I mean, it
Come on,
also led
sis.
me to find use, right? But like, how do
Mhm.
we do that in outside? How do we choose otherwise?
That's right.
Is it
I
here?
think you just do
Is
it.
this?
I think you're doing it, right? Like, you are the thing here, I love Toni Morrison, and, like,
Mm,
I've just been meditating on this for so long as I think
mm,
about where society is, and there's an interview that she does, and she says, "You know what? Goodness can't be seduced because it doesn't want
mm,
anything,"
mhm, mm,
right?
mm,
I make
mhm,
my stuff. I talk my shit because I know I'm good. I'm
mm,
good on the inside. My heart is
mm,
kind and good. My spirit is
mm,
alive. My body's online, right? I hear
mm,
from God.
mhm,
My kids are laughing. So I don't
mm,
need what this thing has to offer me. And that's why we have to get free of whiteness. It attaches to your shame and to your ego, and it
mm,
turns you into a machine. right? And so
Mm.
you have to decide you are gonna face some loss. No, I'm never gonna be as viral as anybody else, but I don't need that, right? Like who,
Mm.
I keep thinking about these stories about John the Baptist that like, John the Baptist, they went out to the wilderness to watch dude burn, right? Like they found him in the wilderness because people will be attracted to the real more and more too, right?
Mhm.
Because the same logics that built the algorithm are destroying the country. So that means that it's only a matter of
Mhm.
time before for me already online, it's just very noisy and it's not the online space has become a receptacle for the worst parts of our humanity, but I think there
Mhm.
are also people who like you, right, who are signposts in that thing. Is like, "Here's where you can drink some water. Here's where you can find some
Mhm.
light. Here's where you can go and rest. Here's where the word is touching me." And it will reach who it needs to reach. And the other thing is, man, Jesus only had about 120 show up to the conference. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Mhm. Mhm.
he had 12, they all dipped.
Mhm.
Even the closest ones left. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Like, it was a relatively Jesus would j imagine having 120 followers today. Even you beat that. Even
Mhm.
I beat that.
Mhm. Mhm.
Like, seriously,
Mm.
you know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
That's who was at Pentecost, about 120 people, like, real followers. You talking about engagement. Imagine that. Imagine going and trying to get a grant or somebody to pay attention to you with 120 followers, right? So it just the logic but look at what that man did without violence.
Mm.
2,000 years
Mhm.
ago, we still talking about him. You see?
Mm.
So it's not
Mm.
about the algorithm. It's about
Mhm.
affect. It's about are you
Mhm.
anointed to talk your shit or not? And if you are, it will resonate. And I
Mhm.
think there's gotta be a move towards that, especially in spaces of people who do have public theology, a calling to public theology, right? Like you and me have. I think part of this is calling, right? Like, hell no, you're not
Mhm.
about to turn God into a weapon and I'm not gonna say something. Like that's just not gonna
Mhm.
happen, right?
Yeah.
So, and here's a medium that I can use because the institutions don't like me very much, right? So here's a
Mhm.
medium
Mhm.
that gives me some space,
Mhm.
and some freedom, and it will
Mhm.
touch who it's supposed to touch. But I think a long time ago I had and like I said, I talk like I'm kicking it. I had I guess you'd call it an encounter or like a in meditation where this is a long time ago. I was maybe 20. And I
Mm.
remember being asked by the spirit, do you want fame or do you want impact? And I had to make a
Mm.
choice. And I chose
Mm.
impact,
Mm.
right? It doesn't
Mm.
mean that everybody famous is not making an impact, right? It doesn't
Yes,
mean that
yes.
my impact won't cause fame,
That is
right?
white logic.
Right. But it's posture, right?
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
posture. And the people that I hang out with, the people that I spend time with, the people that I
Mm.
collaborate and partner with, they're
Mhm.
beautiful people. Like, they got the
Mhm.
stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
They
Mhm.
their lives actually remind me of Jesus. They exhibit the fruit of the Spirit, and most of them don't even mess with Christianity like that, but the fruit of the Spirit is there. I see them walk in
Mm.
love and joy and peace. They're kind people,
Mm.
they're gentle, they're faithful. You know what I mean? They have
Mhm.
self-control, they have integrity. I'm like, "Man,
Mhm.
I don't need fame if I've got 120 people in my life who live like that. What else do you
Mm.
need?"
Mm.
What else do you need? That's the thing about
Mm.
whiteness is it convinces you that you're not enough. It's the same thing that
Mhm.
happens in the garden, right? Like they get convinced that in and of themselves they need more. Something's missing. Says who?
Mhm.
The only thing they didn't know was evil. And then isn't
Mm.
that wild? I mean, the story goes everything's good
Mhm.
and there's one place where evil can be
Mhm.
found. And so
Mm.
the temptation is God knows something you don't know.
Mm.
The not having, the not enoughness. We all feel that. That's called desire. It's called hunger,
Mhm.
right? But you're
Mhm.
supposed to sit with it. That's part of the human experience. It's how we become curious. You're not supposed to use that and exploit other living things just so that you
Mm.
can become invulnerable and not
Mm.
have somebody that knows more than you. That's a mess. That's AI.
Mm.
It is insatiable quest to know everything.
Mhm.
It's a
Mm.
desire for omniscience.
Yeah.
But the story never says God is omniscient. It just says God knows more. Doesn't say God knows everything. It's a trick.
Mm. Mhm. Mm.
See, the trick is y'all thought God ate from that tree. The story doesn't say that.
Mm. And it's interesting in this logic, right? Like evil is born from the fruit, right?
But see, it's not though, like, that's what's wild when I think about wildness, right, Connie? Because like, sin doesn't even show up till Genesis 4. Sin is not in that story.
Mm-hmm.
It's not intrinsic.
Mm-hmm.
It's not born when you eat.
Mm-hmm.
What shows up in Genesis 3 is shame. Sin
Mm,
attaches to
mm,
shame, okay?
mm.
Like,
The
when
fruit,
God points
see,
out
the fruit is shame.
right, the
Mm,
fruit of our desire for invulnerability is shame.
mm,
It will always be shame because the
mm,
human condition is vulnerable.
mm,
We're
mm,
limited,
mhm,
right? So then Genesis 4 comes in and God's like, "Oh, there's sin. It's right there. And here's what it wants to do. And you can rule over it." So I don't know where American Christianity got that you're born in sin, that it's something that lives
mhm,
inside of you. When we meet sin, it has nothing to do with that tree, nothing to do with that woman, nothing to do with that serpent, and it doesn't live inside you.
mhm,
I don't know where they got that from, but it sure does. It works a wonder. It works a wonder on
mhm.
people's psyche. You can get a lot of people to do a lot of stuff when they don't trust themselves.
I'm sitting with so my reading of that story is that, which now I'm trying to examine my own
Yeah,
mind, which is that it's not sin to be curious, right? The woman wanted knowledge, right? Wanting
yeah,
knowledge in itself is not curious, but what you're
that's right.
bringing up, which is this like that to me already feels like a deconstructed version of the white story, right? Like some
Yeah,
version of that white story. And
yeah,
for me, the fruit isn't the like that makes you one thing or other, but the
talk.
shame, the desire for knowledge. Eve is actually like a leading figure of
Mhm,
desire for knowledge.
mhm,
But what you're saying is that
mhm.
desire for knowledge, is it against parallel to this idea of this disembodiment and shame?
I
Help me
wonder. I keep because I'm reading that
unravel.
story. Yeah, I know,
Mhm.
and I wanna talk to you about this. I saw your post on it, and it's so good, and so many people are going after the Genesis 3 story, which I love from the perspective of
Mm,
divine feminine, and I'm just doing it from social analysis because that's, like, my mind, so it's, like, not even I
yes.
think that's a beautiful route, but I think that's the beauty of the text, is you can excavate all these things from it, so I love what you're doing with the text. I wouldn't change that,
Mm,
actually. I love what you're
mm,
doing with it. I'm,
mm,
like, pointing out the impulse for invulnerability gets checked in
mm,
that story because that's where it all comes from. Exploitation comes from that. It comes from
mm,
our inability to sit with limitation. We don't like it.
mm.
And
I mean,
so like go for it.
no, what I'm saying is not yours or mine. What I'm saying is that it's interesting because if our readings get paralleled against each other, there's something about it doesn't detract from mine to hold yours is what I'm trying to get at. The feeling is
Yeah.
like, you can desire knowledge, and yet when you don't feel like the knowledge is ever enough, then shame sets in. There's something about that from the
Yes.
social side, right? Of like,
Yeah.
what we know is not enough, so AI, like Google is not enough, so AI, and everything is like we needed Amazon yesterday, right? Like,
Mhm.
like we
It
we
is.
cannot we cannot be satiated. And
No.
that and that desire, rather than sitting with the body of it, we become ashamed of it, right? Like I,
Mhm.
I think it's like we all have these desires,
Yes.
perhaps like just being a person, whether or not
Yes.
you're like enforced by conditioning even more so, but like the idea
Yeah.
of she didn't sin because she wanted a fruit, but also at what point did we turn this into insatiableness, into shame, and how does shame like
Yeah.
latch onto the body and sits inside the body, which
Mhm.
is fascinating because I was going to ask you, I was like,
Mhm.
okay, so hospice work, you die to it,
Yeah.
whiteness dies, you unleaven, don't know exactly, like, yes, I'm for it, and I'm also like, but people have to choose to die, right? Like we can't like kill
Mhm.
it, so to speak, right? Like that's it's not
Mhm.
you can't unleaven a bread, as your
That's
your
right.
metaphor is. So
Mhm.
when they choose it, And I'm really struck and moved by this idea of like, okay, we choose it
Mhm,
and we choose not to need it. We choose not to need what the state
mhm,
offers because whiteness is a position relative to the state. And if we don't
mhm,
need the state to tell us who we are, if Pam
mhm,
Bondi doesn't need the state to tell her who she is, then
mhm,
what we become is like pre-Constantine, right? The community where like
mhm.
your identity isn't like legible or granted by empire,
Right.
like if you're going for the white story, right?
That's
But
right.
then I mean, there's like civilizations of people who just
Mhm,
existed without the state
mhm.
telling them who they are. But okay, so
Yeah.
that is like maybe step 1.0, and then you go not necessarily linear, but then
Mhm,
if you are not a position, then what I'm hearing is that then you become a body, because what you're saying that you need is that I need what I hear you say is I need bodies. I don't need the state or the algorithm giving me thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of followers. What I
mhm.
need is body. And so if Pam Bondi, so I'm just thinking through what you're saying. If
Yeah.
Pam Bondi um is able to die, her whiteness can die. She's willing to
Mhm,
die to that part, then
mhm,
the whiteness is this disembodiment that lets her be abstract and universal and neutral, right? And so the death of that position forces you back into the body where
mhm,
you need to deal with the shame and
mhm,
the finiteness and the located
mhm,
body, and where
mhm,
you're aging and you bleed and nothing is guaranteed.
mm,
And you need to understand somehow that that is not a punishment,
mhm,
but to me, at least, when I think about embodiment, that is not a punishment because that is where the sacred choose to live. That is where the
mhm,
brown body of Christ choose to inhabit.
mhm,
And that, for me, I guess, if I'm following your metaphor and logic,
mhm,
that's the resurrection. That's the
mhm.
resurrection of
Yeah.
the dying,
Mhm.
which is incarnation, incarnation back into the body. You finally get
That's
one. You
right.
finally get to be in one. Is that what am I
Yes.
on the right track of what you're
Beautiful,
thinking?
Connie.
Okay.
Yes, beautiful. And it's so beautiful because it's like incarnation unto resurrection. Because see, Pam Bondi, if Pam Bondi laid down her whiteness, she might become
Mhm,
a real being. She might
mm,
actually meet herself. Because the thing is, like, I believe, in consciousness and source consciousness and those types of things. And really, a lot of the Eastern traditions really help to kind of smooth this out in a way. But there are passages in Christian scriptures that speak to this as well. One is 1 Corinthians 15:28, which is
mm,
interesting that no one starts here and works backwards because they should. But
mm,
that would require that we got rid of Christian supremacy, which I don't think people want to do because of the power that
mm,
comes attached to it. But in First
mm,
Corinthians 15:28, it says, then comes the end when the kingdom is put under the feet, right? That Jesus
mm,
himself is subjected to the Father, that everything comes under the subjection to the Father. The last enemy to be defeated is death, and then God is all in all. What does all in all mean? Right? So we keep
mm,
thinking about the telos of Christianity is heaven. First
mm,
Corinthians says the telos of Christianity is utter non-separateness.
mm,
So if that's the reality, if that's where we're going, then we start
mm,
there, we work backwards, and we think about our humanity in light of that. And the tragedy of Pam Bondi and every one of the cronies that hung her out to dry. So let's say that these cowardly men put these women in front of all of these people to make them the
mm,
scapegoats. That's the nature of whiteness. It can't look at itself.
mm,
It's the Cain and Abel story, but I won't do that. But I think about really the existential reality. The point of
mm,
existence is existence. Okay?
mm,
That's the point.
mm,
And so, period. Is to be. God's name is
mm,
being, not doing.
mm, mm,
Right?
mm,
So this thing that comes into the garden is you will be like God. Well, what's wrong with being human? Like,
mm,
what's wrong with curiosity? What's wrong with receiving from the tree? Why you got to take from it? Right? The
mm,
posturing is different because you've separated yourself from the fact that all of this is one thing. There is no
mm,
separation happening here. It's all coming from one place. And so what whiteness does is it convinces you that you are separated out from this. And all of
mm,
this becomes a threat now. And I have to push it down and eradicate it. It's Cain and Abel, right?
mm,
I
mm,
have to eradicate the mirror. Like, I can't
mm,
look at it because it
mm,
will remind me of my humanity, but then we go back to the question, who told you you were naked? Who said being human meant this? You've
mm,
always been this type of manifestation of consciousness. Who made it mean something to you? You gotta identify that. You gotta identify your meaning maker. Like, that's
mm,
important. It drives everything that we do. So when you think
mhm,
of her, like the choice to die, Christianity has given us a beautiful metaphor to make meaning out of death.
mm,
Unless a grain of wheat dies, it
mhm,
remains alone, right?
mm,
But if it goes into the ground, it sheds its skin and life bursts forth through the compost process.
mm,
So I keep
mm,
telling like, y'all, we gotta listen to white people who are writing poems and who are writing
mm,
songs because they're taking this experience of their own darkness and grief and pain and shame and they're
mm,
alchemizing it, right, into art, into beauty. And they're being fruitful and they're multiplying. They're using their humanity in ways that serve.
mm,
If the point of experience is experience, then wisdom is curated in just telling the story of our experience. Whiteness can't
mhm,
give you an authentic experience. It's based in
mhm,
capitalism, and people are not
mhm,
units,
mm,
right? So they are being robbed of life by whiteness anyway. They're already dead.
mhm, mm.
That's the problem. You cannot live unless you die, right?
Yeah.
And then if you are a person of color in the United States, then ontologically you represent death already. They need that in place. So that's why Black joy is so frustrating because it's not supposed to
Mm,
be. It's
mm,
frustrating the logic. You know what I mean?
mm, mhm, mm.
Yeah.
Do you think I'm thinking about 2 things at the same time. One is that
Yeah.
people I mean, I people are afraid of brown Jesus.
That's right.
I think I've said this in other ways of whenever I will always say Jesus was brown, right? Like
Yeah.
I will say in my videos and someone will be like, "You didn't need to say that he's brown." And I'm like,
Yes,
why
we
is
did.
that frightening to you? Like, why is that frightening to you? What are we talking about? Like, why is that so frightening to you? And so, like, what is a relationship of a people
Uh,
who worships a God that they are afraid of, right? Like, what
right.
happens to them? And also,
Mm.
I'm really struck by this because I agree with you. I agree that if
Yeah.
Pam Bondi turns back, she would cry, or not. She would not she in her body right
Uh-huh.
now, but like to
Uh-huh.
actually turn back, she would need
Uh-huh.
to mourn, she would need to grieve. And I
Uh-huh.
know that like in an embodied way, but I don't know exactly what would make her weep. And yet I'm hearing you and hearing you say like do you do you think the weeping, right? Because if this is hospice work, we should all be weeping. Like we should all
Yeah.
be crying a lot, you know? Like
That's
I
right.
have been really feel called to start like a grief circle where like I'm like
Come on.
we should put dig a hole in the ground
Yes.
and we all take turns lying in it and just stand around and
Talk.
say eulogies to each other, right? Like
Talk.
what needs to die, what needs to go.
Yes.
Let's like cry because
Yes.
people aren't crying. Um,
Uh-huh.
and I'm like, okay, so what would they cry about? Or that's not a really good question. How do we make them cry? How do we make people cry, right? Like, and that sounds like I'm saying like, how do we
Uh,
by be a bully? What I'm saying is like, how do we make
yeah.
space for grief? What is it
Yeah.
that we can do as bodies who want to not to recognize as clearly as you are of like I don't need this thing that you are offering me. I don't need it. Okay? And then so it becomes like I think what do you need? Right?
Uh,
What do you need and how do we make space, hold space so
mhm.
people can cry? How do you make
Okay.
Pam Bondi cry?
I'm not sure you can, and that makes me wanna
Mm,
cry.
mm,
I'm not sure you can, and that makes me wanna cry. Real talk.
mm, mm,
Because it's unfortunate.
Mm.
I don't think you can make people cry. I think about okay, 'cause I'm mystical, right? So, I think about
Mhm.
crying differently these days. I think about it as waters
Mm.
passing through, as, like, sadness,
Mm.
like,
Mm.
using my body and through
Mhm.
waters to pass through a cycle, right? And it has to do with feeling like I'm a part of all of this. I am not
Mhm.
separate from this, not the waters, not the trees, not even Pam Bondi. So, like,
Mm.
that orients how I live in the world, and it orients my
Mhm.
choices, and it honestly, Connie, like, it forces me to have not lie about my truth because
Mhm.
someone has to see that you don't have to do it, right?
Mm. Yep.
And I think about people like, Pastor Black from, Chicago who was talking to the ICE. I just met him. I had a conversation with him last week
Mm.
and, was reminded of how he was calling to these ICE officers and saying, "Don't have to do this. You
Yeah.
don't have to do this," right? Now, there are these examples, and I don't know if I'm answering your question, so if I don't, just circle me back, but there are these examples in scripture of that I've been sitting with, and, Jesus cursed the fig tree.
Yeah.
So this is how I'm thinking about it now, because people will always
Mhm.
ask me growing up, I've had this vision of, like, oneness and, like, I just feel like we could do it if we would just try to do it, and people be like, "No, we need justice and we need wicked to be accounted for," and it would always be this constant conversation.
Yeah.
But I feel like Jesus cursing the fig tree helped me think about this in the sense that, like,
Mhm.
if everything is one thing,
Mhm.
then composting is just a repurposing,
Mhm.
and if you're
Mhm.
gonna waste your humanity, then you just wasted your humanity, and so that's my new way of dealing with
Mm.
vitriolic, really nasty. Because I get some nasty white people who talk to me online every now and again, and I just tell them,
Mm.
like, "What a waste of an opportunity to live a beautiful life. Look how you've
Mhm.
been robbed by a lie." You have a
Mhm.
choice every day how you're
Yeah.
gonna use your freedom, how you're gonna use your power. And guess what, baby? You can't blame nobody for it. It's why you can't look, because you know nobody's to blame. It's you in the mirror. It's you.
Mhm.
You're doing this. And you've
Mhm.
got to ask yourself, why am I doing this? And that question, why am I doing this? That will take you probably to some grief.
Mhm.
It'll take you to some sadness
Yeah.
because so many people have
Yeah.
wasted the opportunity to live a beautiful, full, enjoyable life that is not bereft of
Mhm.
pain and suffering because people make choices and people are free. So that means you're gonna bump
Yeah.
into some people and it means you're gonna have to have some boundaries. It doesn't mean we're not doing sinners. We're not doing Remick and
Mhm.
vampires can't come into the party. We're not doing that.
Yeah.
But we're going like there is something deeper underneath all of this that the
Mhm.
algorithm is trying to rob us of, that our egos are trying to rob us of, that competition and comparison is trying to rob us of. And at the end of the day, the point of all of this is to
Mhm.
experience it and to talk about that experience. That's how we curate wisdom. So we get them in touch with the loss of life that they're experiencing
Mhm.
right now.
Mhm.
And most of them have lived I don't know any MAGA people who have a lot of black people in their life. You know what I'm saying? Like, and the
Yeah.
high quality whites that I know, they're embedded in
Mhm.
communities of color. And they're not
Yeah.
appropriating those communities, but they can see, man, it's possible to live like filled with joy in the midst of bullshit. Like you can do it. Like I'm looking at my friends do it. Like, I follow Brown
With
Girl
better
Pride, who's
food.
also dope. Well, better child and music, okay? But, like, Brown Girl Pride has been putting some good stuff out recently, and
Mm.
I don't wanna co-sign on everything, but I just started
Mm.
paying attention to that person's
Mm.
profile. But I like what they've been saying, and they were like, "For 16 minutes, we had joy with Bad Bunny's Super Bowl. Please don't take that away from us with your activism. Like,
Mhm.
can we let some things breathe?" And we have to understand, y'all, we are by nature of being born in this country, we're complicit in all manner of things that we did not know,
Yeah.
right? There's stuff
Yeah.
I'm complicit in right now, I have no idea is going on, right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I think that posture of like, it's all one thing. We have to get up underneath this. We
Mm.
don't have to let it mean this. And we don't have to
Mhm.
act like it's true. The other things, we
Mhm.
don't have to be afraid to die. Look, Jesus is like, consider the lilies, y'all. I'm trying to put you on game. Nothing that
Mhm.
dies stays dead. It's a cycle. And I think
Mhm.
that what you're talking about, these pre-Christian communities, that's what we're missing because they
Mhm.
embedded death cycles and burial rituals and initiations into their culture so that people know how to sit with
mm,
pain. They put markings on you. They
mm,
do all of these things so that you know what pain feels like, so that you know that this hurts, but you got this whole community of people clapping and cheering for you and stomping and praying for you, laying hands on you,
mm,
giving you a name. Yeah, life
mm,
is painful and shit
yep,
happens and people die. And
mm,
here's how we move through that together in these seasons, in these rhythms. And what
mm,
whiteness robbed us of is reality, the
mhm,
reality of oneness and the
mm,
reality of cycles,
mm,
right?
mhm,
And if we step into that rhythm, then we'll just learn how to abide with it. It'll be like going with the waves. You know, they go in and they go out. They go in and they go out. And I think,
mhm,
part of what I've watched is my high quality white friends, they have cycles. They
mm,
don't need to be heard all the time. They're content to just sit quietly sometimes. But
mhm,
if it's time to talk shit, they could talk shit. They
mm,
know their work. They're in their bodies. They usually
mm,
have altars. They usually
mm,
have a kind of a pantheon going on. They're deeply into
mm,
meditation. They do
mm,
ritual practice. I mean, I feel like there is a way. I know some deeply soulful white people,
mm,
and you can tell when you meet them because there's a resonance, and there's
mhm,
pain on the face, and they've got the lines on their eyes from the weeping and the tears of letting go of this thing that robbed them. They didn't choose it either, right?
yeah,
Like, none of us
yeah,
chose this necessarily, but when you know you have a choice, it's what you do, and they chose to
mhm,
die. And I'm looking at the
mhm,
fragrance coming from their life, and I can't argue with it. It smells like
mm,
God. You know what I mean? So
mm,
I hope they all embrace this death. It's a beautiful death. It has
mm,
beautiful fruit because
mm,
they're already dying. I mean, if they're not dead already. Whiteness is a
mm,
terrorist.
yeah, I'm really moved by this image of the tears is the water of the all in all flowing through us and moving through us. I think of as you're talking, I think about like a fruit tree, right? And I
Yes.
think a lot of times we think, I mean, it feels this algorithmic world has made it, you can't really say, what do we do about the ICE agents who signed up? Who
Right.
who really thought they needed $50,000, however much were
That's right.
promised this.
Mhm.
There some of them are overdosing, and, like, does it
Jesus.
right, like, some of them are overdosing, you are doing this every day, what does it do to you and your
I'm
humanity,
sure.
right?
That's right.
And yeah, and I don't know how to answer any of this, and
I
from what
think we
I'm
can
hearing is
cry.
mm,
I cry over these people because they were
mhm,
that broke that they sold their soul.
mm,
I've been
mm,
broke. I get the temptation.
mm,
And it makes me wanna weep because I don't know what
mm,
kept me or keeps me from making choices like that, but I'm grateful to it, and I wanna keep saying yes to it. And so I look
mm,
at these officers and real talk, I feel violence towards them in my heart. I feel like I wish I could sock one of you people, right? Um, but then I think there's nobody there that would feel it anyway. They're gone. They
mhm,
have
yeah,
abdicated their humanity. And so now I
mm.
just mourn. I mourn their lives.
Mm. Yeah, I'm just like yes, you cry. I'm thinking about a tree with where a fruit has rotted and it falls and it is not it's not possible to save every fruit. It is not possible to keep all the fruits on there for the tree. I mean, like the tree cannot salvage all the fruits, right? Neither can the things neither can the earth when it falls down onto it. And
That's right.
the sometimes the rotten fruit is just that, and it
It's just that.
recycles into this death, and it is compost, and you can weep over a tree that is diseased and just has produces all rotten fruits.
That's right. And I think people are
Mm,
having to come to term with that, just like in hospice work, right? Like
mhm,
the coming to terms. There are people
mm,
who have family members and aunts and uncles, even parents, grandparents who are
mhm,
locked in. And
mm,
that's something to grieve, right? Because it doesn't
mhm,
mean you didn't go on family vacation and eat ice cream and play Twister.
mhm,
Those things really happened. But
Mhm.
when it came down to the deeper thing, they couldn't go
Mm.
with you. And that cannot only be processed on Instagram. That needs to be
Yeah.
processed in a room with a therapist in ritual practice.
Yeah.
Like, give us what comes out of that process, because
Yeah.
that will be life for the world, right?
It's interesting because you refer to high quality white people, right? But I
Mhm,
also hear you say, like, I hear you say it, and I hear you appreciate, you said that their fragrance smells like God, right? Like, I hear that thing. And I wanted to ask if it's because, okay, I don't know if this is a apt comparison, but we say abolish ICE, right? We're not like, let's
mhm,
just restructure it, right? So, like,
mhm.
is the thing that gets born, I just want to clarify for the
Yeah,
audience, and it's a question. The thing that gets born isn't a better version of
no.
whiteness. That is the temptation of it, right? Like, the resurrection isn't like a more conscious whiteness or an anti-racist whiteness or whiteness that has done
Well,
its work, right? Right.
yeah,
But,
buddy.
like, I think that's why the hospice metaphor to me is so precise, because it
Mhm,
says the dead is dead, right? Like, the
mhm.
dead is dead. There's no upgraded version. The
That's
position is
right.
gone, right? The position is
That's right.
gone. And so then you're just a body. Is that
Mhm.
what I'm understanding? Even as
Indeed.
you're saying high quality white people. Okay.
Yes. And I use that because as Amanda Seales, she put a video out, and I was like, "Yeah, I know
Mhm.
a couple of those." But, like,
Mhm.
yeah, it is. It's like, it's dead, and it's not coming back.
Mm.
Like, I mean, I'm sure it will and then there's, like, the question of, like, empires rise and fall, right?
Yeah.
I think what I'm trying to do in my work is to help people lock in and understand the logic of whiteness so that they don't participate in it in these other micro ways, right?
Mm.
Because if it's only wrong when they do it, but not when you do it, it's not wrong. I
Mm.
mean, right?
Mhm.
Like it,
Mhm.
because I mean, what ground are you standing on,
Yeah.
right? What ground from which are you making this argument? And
Mm.
so I think that's what makes Jesus a really amazing cheat code right now, because I think
Mm.
that's what Jesus was getting at. Like, it's
Mm.
not about me being weak. It's not about
Mm.
me being passive. It's about me
Mhm.
being real locked into reality, which is that, like,
Mm.
to hurt you is to hurt me, bro, and I like me too much. I'm so hard, I'm not gonna hit you back. Like, you actually don't understand reality, right? It's
Mm.
not a weak pansy thing. It is, you are out of touch. So out of touch, try and destroy it, I'll
Mm.
raise it in 3 days. You can't kill life. And so if that's your posture, it doesn't mean that you live, I mean, you're not living like a rock star. I mean,
Mm.
Jesus lived a relatively lonely life, but it's about calling a spade a spade. If you're not gonna bear fruit, you can go. Right?
Mhm.
Like, this temple, there will not be one stone left upon another. And they were, like,
Mm.
bragging to Jesus about the temple, right? Like, it's like, "Look at this new
Mhm.
center they built, da, da, da." He's like, "Let me tell you something. You imagine what that felt like, right? To
Yeah.
always be tapped in to
Yeah.
the fact of, like, these logics, y'all, they don't end well, right? His own
Mm.
his own homies had the logics at work, right? "Y'all don't know
Yeah.
what spirit you're of. You just gonna call down fire on anybody who don't say it like you?" He's like,
Mm.
"You don't know what spirit you're of." So he was
Mm.
that's what I mean. It's like there's a an underlying reality that is gonna require death from all of us. I think
Mm.
people of color have to ask these questions earlier, because it's just the system is so hard. The system is so hard on you, you have to look elsewhere, right?
Yeah.
To make sense of it all.
Mhm.
But the thing of just calling it dead, I think that's step 1. Like, and to leave
Mm.
it there, right? And then
Mm.
there's this conversation of, like, I don't know how we walk this out. This, like, we present our bodies as living sacrifice. I'm working on my Ember talk. So I'm thinking about this
Mm.
idea of, like, being a living sacrifice means this constant resistance to the choice to be invulnerable, right? Or the temptation to exploit
Mm.
in service of my own invulnerability, right? Like, I
Mm.
am trying to live with a steady resistance to that impulse.
Mm.
Because if you don't, you will become ice. You will become
Mm.
Pam Bondi. All of those people
Mm.
made those choices out of a desire to be invulnerable and unlimited, because
Can
they
you
think that's what God
share?
is like.
Yeah, yeah. Can you share, like, the most recent inner dialogue you've had about this, like, resisting living sacrifice? What does that look like? How does that look like in practice?
I think actually, what's real talk coming out as
Mm.
post-Christian because I feel like it's a necessary thing to say because it names the experience of feeling like I wore something out. So the thing is because of the pejorative, it's really all connected to like what people will say about you, right? So me
Yes.
saying I'm post-Christian has nothing to do with being post-conviction, right?
Mm,
It has to do with being post-category. Because
mm,
I think when you categorize something, when you lock it down, when you put creeds on it, it means you can't go outside of this space or else you're no longer in the thing. But that
mhm,
lends itself to supremacy.
mm,
And I'm like, I actually just want to have a conversation with my tradition. I don't want to be caged by it. But I also
mm,
have so much history in God and so much, like on a regular basis, conversation with Jesus that y'all can't take
mm,
that from me either. I'm keeping my history. So post Christian
mhm,
was a way to say, I did my tradition. I did it well. I'm telling myself,
mm,
well done. And now I wanna have a
mhm,
conversation with all these other traditions and all these other ways of making sense and making meaning, because I think they can
mm,
bear on this in a way that makes it more expansive, right?
mm,
But what that means is you don't get jobs because they wanna
mm.
make sure that you're keeping everybody in the frame, right? You don't
Yes.
get called because they think you're gonna call people out of the frame, right? So it puts you in this
Mhm,
very fugitive experience of like you're just a little too much or just not enough. Because in the other spaces, they don't wanna hear about Jesus, but I'm not letting Jesus go.
mhm,
So, it
mhm,
puts you in this odd experience that I could have said, "I'll just lie," right? Like,
mhm,
I know
mm.
enough scripture or like, you know, I know how to make this sound Christian, but I
Yes.
felt like it was more important to say, "Y'all, these categories are tripping us up." Like,
Mhm,
nothing is closed. The Spirit of God cannot be contained, can't be captured. And perhaps we need new wineskins. And this was a way to kind of like introduce this conversation to the table of like, we keep trying
mhm,
to save something that might be gone, right?
mhm,
Because everybody's arguing over who's doing it right. And to me, that's an
mhm,
indicator. It's like we're wasting all our energy over arguing over who owns Christianity, who's doing it right, as opposed to just saying, here's where it worked, here's what I need now. And I think
yeah,
yeah. So that feels like
I
to me living
the living
sacrifice, right? Like
sacrifice. Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, to me, I've never said this publicly, but I mean, Jesus is not Christian.
No.
You know? No, Jesus is not Christian, and people based on my content, right, really wanna know, "Are you Christian? Are you Gnostic? Are you this?" And they wanna put me in a category, and I'm like, "You know that God is none of these things, right? Like,
That's right.
God is none of these degrees, God is none of these things. Why do I need to be one of these things? It's for
Mhm.
you, right? Like it's for your comfort. And that is and it's like to there's a yeah, I hear you of just like when
Mhm.
people don't know but when people don't know how to categorize you, you are in the
Mhm.
wilderness. And then back to what you said, though, people go
Mhm.
find you because you're John the Baptist, right? Like
That's right.
people, yeah. And it is this
Yeah.
constant logic. I'm hearing you like move like you're so it feels so well oiled for you to the
Mhm.
integration of like I am moving out, but that I still have the tendency because we were all raised in this I don't know
Mhm.
what matrix.
Mhm.
So, but you're like, okay, I this gets me out, and out here, out
Yes.
here is the
Mhm.
wilderness. Out here is outside the state, and we
Mhm.
become this like homeless, stateless people who
Yeah.
really is the scriptural people, right? Like
That's
of like
right.
you're relying on your connection with the all in all to sustain
That's
you.
right.
Yeah.
And we have like it's so funny, Connie, because we have a uniquely American and historical um example of that in the Hush Harbor. It's exactly what the
Mm,
Hush Harbor was. It was
mm,
when enslaved Africans would
mm,
sneak out off the plantation and go worship God in their own language. They would keep
mm,
all of the things from Africa that they could remember. They would say
Mhm.
it the way they wanted to say it. They would name God the way they wanted to name God in ways that were
Mhm.
not allowed on the plantation. And so the
Mm.
hush harbor becomes, for me, the new place of rooting down in my tradition because the hush harbor came
Mm.
before the black church.
Mhm.
As the things that are bubbling up in the hush harbor make their way onto the plantation, it becomes plantation churches. And then those churches
Mm.
become schools. And then those
Mm.
schools become everything we know today as black culture. From the blues come out of like black church, all of the music, all of the culture, all the art, all the aesthetic, all the soul, all the music, all the love, the culture of
Mm.
blackness came from these fugitive gatherings
Mhm.
in the woods because they
Mhm.
said, no, you can't cage me.
Mm.
I refuse to be caged.
Mhm.
And the hush harbors themselves were invisible, they were secret, they were coded, you had to follow your gut to get there, they were hidden in songs, you had to know what was being said in the music,
Mm.
but there is enough of an imprint of them throughout Black culture and history that I'm like, "Okay, it's possible for us to do this again." It's just like you're saying, these
Mm.
pre-Christian, sort of fugitive communities
Mm.
who
Mm.
are breaking bread around being enthralled about this dude. Like, this dude was
Mm.
just different. And I don't
Mm.
know, he bothers me, but, like,
Mm.
what he's saying feels so, so true, though. Like,
Mm.
and putting ourselves in that place of just going, like, we might even be situated to Jesus differently, but I tell you, like, he brings some really dope people to a table, and
Yeah.
when you can break bread at a table like that, it's no telling what can happen. So I'm in service of that. So post-Christianity is not post-conviction, and it's maybe not post-church in the truest
Mm.
sense of the word, the fugitive contextual communities that came out of a witness of Jesus.
Mm.
I think that that's possible to sustain, to continue to sustain. I think that that's
Mm.
possible to rise again in the earth. I think it is rising again in the earth. But the thing is that whiteness can't have it. And whiteness is never going to be welcome in those spaces. And so that's why I'm like, all right, if y'all want to be a part of the move, like we see at the end of the gospels that the witness is moving, is changing shape. I'm giving you my Ember talk, but like it's coming from the women. The good news is
Mm.
coming from the women.
Mhm.
Jesus is showing up in ways we don't
Always.
recognize. Right. As always. Jesus is relatively unrecognizable. The
Mhm.
onus of realizing whether we've been with Jesus or not is our hearts burning,
Mm. Mm.
right?
Mm.
And the dudes are arguing. They're arguing on
Mhm.
the road to Emmaus. They're arguing over what's happened, right? So they're breaking bread with
Mhm.
people they might even disagree with, but their hearts burn for the same things. And that's
Mhm.
the juice. We got to listen to the
Mm.
divine feminine. We got to be at tables with people we might not agree with. We have to break
Mm.
bread, like have community, break bread with people that we might not have been at the table, except that like we actually care about the same things when you really get down to it. And then that about a bitch, right? Like
Mhm.
that's how the church gets formed. And then you get to Paul and you can alleviate Paul from all this pressure to be telling the universal church what to do. And then he becomes a dude who's addressing real problems because people who don't agree are in one space together, and people from different classes, and people who have different, ways of addressing the problems, right?
Mhm.
They're all
Yep.
trying to break bread together. And so he's writing to these communities instead of letting it be beautiful, instead of letting it be what it is. They took and they were like, oh, we could do a lot with this. We take
Mm.
this out of context and make it mean a thing and then put it in law and
Mm.
put it on the books. Buddy, we could
Mhm.
we could turn the world upside down. And look what whiteness has done with the Bible.
Mm.
We gotta let it go.
Mm. Amen. Amen to that. I feel like an openness in my body. I feel an openness,
Shay.
an invitation to be big.
Shay. You could have not said
Mm.
anything more, what is that word? That's all I wanna do, Connie. I just wanna turn
Mhm.
on all the lights, as many lights as I can, and I want people to feel permission to be big out here. Take up
Mhm.
space.
Mm. You are big and powerful, and
Thank
there's
you,
this,
friend.
it's big in the way that invites everyone to be big, and not big in the way that, like,
Oh, Shay.
you know? Yeah. I feel like I can keep talking to you for another
Yeah,
3
we gotta
hours,
hang
but I
out.
also wanna but I'm also like, I wanna respect your time. Let's see. Is there anything there's so much. I wanna talk to you about queerness, I wanna talk to you about sex, I
Yeah.
wanna talk to you about,
Yeah.
like, how like, what the fucking point of all of this is if we don't have pleasure. For me, it's my work is about pleasure, my work is about reclaiming the relationship to the body, and so, I'm just like,
Yeah,
I
buddy.
wanna talk to you about that, but that feels like another 2-hour
Yeah, let's do that another time. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, yeah,
Man,
yeah,
yeah, for sure.
yeah,
Yeah, and I
because
got a lot of
yeah,
good people around that
I
topic you
learned
could talk to too.
oh, I would love that. Please introduce me to more people. I take my time to, like, seek out people through people,
Mhm,
but it is not
mhm.
the algorithm is, again, not very friendly, Like, I'm like
Yeah.
but my question for you was, like, what is on your altar before we close?
What's on my altar? Shoot, I don't have any of those good things on there yet, but you
Mm,
got me got my mind turning. Right now, I have pictures of my family, like grandparents, deceased
mm,
loved ones. I
mhm,
have a bunch of crystals
mm,
that we charge during the full moon. I
mm,
have uh, a bowl. I'm thinking of everything that's on there. A bowl of just different types of sages and incense.
mm,
My spouse and I, we lost our son. Our first attempt, we
mm,
lost our son. So we have a stone that we carried during the IVF process that
mm,
represents Rustin James. That's on our altar. Fresh water plants.
mm,
And then sometimes we put food, like when my spouse loves to cook. They're like I feel like their spiritual gift is resourcefulness. So like
mm,
they find really cool recipes and it's kind of like their little alchemy that they do in the kitchen.
mm,
And so sometimes when they make something really good, we put that on the altar. And
mm,
just like candles, and that's our little spot. Like our kids, well, not Ishay, but my youngest or my oldest, she'll light the candles sometimes. Sometimes she'll do the
mm,
incense. And then I have a little portable bag that I take with me, and that's just got like crystals and incense and like water and stuff in it.
mm,
So
mm,
that's what's on there
mm,
now. But like, I like the idea of building different kinds of altars. So
mm,
I might be thinking
mm.
about some of that, some of those goodies you mentioned. I'm like, wait a minute, I didn't think about that. I might have to rethink some stuff. Not sure about putting the toys downstairs in the family altar because it's in the living room, but the room.
'Cause you gotta have the little death and the big death
That's right.
all in the same.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, man, and all of those people believed in me. Those people, I think my altar represents death in different types of ways, like,
Mm,
obviously, those are loved ones that are gone, but there are also people who spoke life into a little person who was queer and a little
mm,
neurospicy and introverted and
mm,
curious.
mm,
And now I know very womanist in my question asking of institutions, and my
mm,
grandmother would tell me all the time that I had royal blood, that I was
mm,
smart, and that
mm,
I was her firstborn, and
mm,
that she was very proud of me. And when I go back and think about that, I can see now that that stuff was initiated by a spirit that was beyond me because the spirit knew what I would have to face being Black and
mm,
queer. And
mm,
I just feel really grateful. So I think that the people on my altar share in who I've become in a very
mm,
interesting way and are a part of my practice. I talk to them, I
mm,
involve them in my life, and it's
mm.
made for a very rich experience of this life, for sure.
What do you call God when you pray?
Buddy, which day? Hold on.
Mm,
So now I pray to God. I pray to the Black Madonna of the Redwoods.
mm,
I pray to the dark goddess who sends forth light. Sometimes
mm,
I talk to Ganesha, the mother man who removes
mm,
obstacles. I always talk to Jesus. I invite Oya and Eshu into my conversation. And so for me, I feel like God is manifested now in this pantheon of people who I invite
mm,
every day to teach
mm,
me and train my attention and help me be present to my kids.
mm,
But I think I'm starting to really realize why God in the scriptures told Moses that their name was being. God is
mm,
being. And so anytime I'm in contact with my own being and I'm
mm,
operating from that place and I'm in touch with it, I am in fact
mm,
in touch with God.
mm.
And that's kind of been my new orientation in life, really. God is being. Yeah, buddy. Feels good,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I don't have
Yeah.
anything to add to that. Let's just end on being. Let's end on
Shay.
being.
Shall we?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for being with me in the capital
Ah,
B
Shay.
word. Yeah, thank you.
Yes. It's been a gift. Thank you, friend.
Do you
Appreciate you.
want to tell any do you want to tell our followers about anything you have
Uh,
coming up
all
or,
the things.
all the
Right.
things? Yes. Where
All
to
the
find you
things.
in the wilderness? Tell us. Give us the song.
You can get all of my stuff at blackmodernmystic.com. So the show is on there, the clearing is on there, the little like we do little science labs and things, those are on there. And then I'll be in Ember gathering next weekend, February 20th to March 1st. So you can come do that. If you are from diaspora, there is a Black Sacred Lounge taking place from 12 to 5 on February the 27th, and it's going to be lit. It's beautiful people gathering in one space, and we'll see what happens. I'm really looking forward to the alchemy of that. I got a book, right?
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
think that's on the website. I'm not sure, but the book is called Faith Unleavened, and it tells the story of like coming up with this metaphor of leaven, but then also leaving white evangelicalism. And I got another book coming out next fall called Light These Roots on Fire, which talks a little bit more about the Hush Harbor, and what it means to be me now. So it's going more into like the
Mm.
experience of Black queerness in the Black experience, which is an interesting
Mm.
story. So trying to do right by it, but it's got ancestors and all kinds of wild things in it, you know what I'm saying?
Mm, mhm.
Because it must. It's a Hush Harbor
As it should
reckoning
be.
with the empire, so that's what I'm doing these days.